All right, I'm not gonna try to waste your guys' time too much. So I made the last video, and right after I released that video, the past week I've been very, very sick. I find that very interesting personally because normally, like when you get sick, it's just like okay, you got a dry throat, runny nose, whatever, right? But like I remember like my eyes like were like getting like really red, you know what I mean? And like it was strange because like every time I was blinking, like like when you wake up and it's just like you got like that sticky stuff. Some people call it like eye booger or something. Every time I was blinking, like that stuff was appearing. But yeah, it was weird. And then that like lasted for a day. Luckily, like all that passed. I'm still a little sick, so pardon me if my voice sounds like a little like raspy or something. But yeah, I just find it interesting how I announced my reversion to Islam, and then I get sick, very sick. And during that time, I had my nephew over, and having family over made me reflect a lot about my journey. So, just to cut to the chase, I was born Catholic. My family, we're all Catholic. Growing up, I was always going to church. My parents weren't overly religious, but they definitely did like have it like as an effort for me and like my family, my brother and my sister, for us to go to church with them. It wasn't until like a few years ago they got super religious and they got into like a whole Catholic group, for Latinos. I grew up Catholic, but I was actually like when I was a kid, even as a kid, I was actually super like atheistic. The reason being is because my brother, um, he's I'm not gonna throw him under the bus or nothing, like he's my brother. But he was super nihilistic. Me being the little brother, him being the older brother, I always hung around him a lot, because like my parents were never really around, like around the house. It was mainly just like my grandma at the time and like my brother. They'd always watch after like me. My brother, him being very pessimistic, very nihilistic, very atheistic with his worldview, it definitely influenced how I saw the world. And I rejected the idea of there being a God when I was growing up. So, because of that, I was very depressed. And I believe when someone rejects the idea of God, when you reject the idea of having God in your life, you're denying your own blessings, you're denying your own success, essentially. And so, unbeknownst to me, when I was rejecting the idea of God, I was rejecting whatever luck that could have come my way. And because of the fact that I became atheistic even at a very, very young age, especially when I was like in my teenage years, I started falling back into some very, very bad habits and just hanging out with the wrong people, the wrong friends, that unfortunately shared the same view. But isn't it interesting how like even though like I was atheistic and a lot of my friends at the time they didn't really believe in God or whatever, isn't it interesting how like they were also like kind of brought up in a similar way? Don't you find it interesting how like a lot of young people they grow up with a very atheistic worldview? I think it'd be very naive of me to blame it on the parents necessarily, because like I think if you're a young person watching this, you agree that okay, my parents like they've always watched out for me, they've always taken care of me. Um, I'm sure like well, I'm just speaking for myself, right? My parents they're religious, but that didn't save me from falling into some shit. I think the reason why a lot of young people, especially young men, fall into very, very serious vices is because that's the agenda that they're pushing on to all of us. They want to breed docile men. They want to take away our masculine energy. And I find it so interesting how, like, they infiltrated all households to the young boys growing up. And like even like when you're a young boy, you're 5 years old, and you have all this energy, right? And you're in school and your feminine teachers telling you, hey, you can't do that. Go sit down. You can't be loud. You can't be this. You can't be that. Trying to control you, you know? What does that do to a young boy's mind where it's like he has all this energy and he doesn't know what to do with it? And the teacher just tells him to basically do what he's told, you know. This teacher's not his parents or anything like that. What does that do to a child's mind? And the child, when they're brought up in the school system, they're what spent like here in the West like 13 years in the school system, 8 hours a day. Parents like they don't even know what their kids are being taught, and it's like so interesting how like parents like they themselves they have work, you know, and what are the kids like? What are they? Who's really raising the children? Me? I can speak for myself. Like I love my parents, but because of the fact that they weren't really around, not particularly for any bad like reason, but it's just like they were always like work or whatever, right? It was either like I was with my friends, my homeboys at the time, or like I was always like, you know, it was the school, you know what I mean? It was school, or it was like, of course, social media. Look what's being promoted. They promote to young girls these female rappers shaking ass and being degenerate with their lyrics. They're being raised to think that that's how they're going to attract a man into their life by essentially being a whore. And that's just me being blunt about it, you know? And it's very sad how like I saw like a lot of like girls that like I was in school with, they eventually morphed into something that they never were. They morphed into being a degenerate, you know? Same thing with a lot of young guys, you know? It's like because of the fact that they might have not had a strong masculine father figure in their life to tell them, to show them how to be a man, they become weak simps, you know? They go after these promiscuous women. And so because of how what's going on in school, what they're teaching us in school, and because of how social media is being set up to target young boys, young girls, like attack their brains and feed them all this garbage, right? Like young boys are getting, you know, addicted to all types of craziness, you know, like I don't want to say too much just yet, you know, but it's interesting how like I, with my atheistic views, got hooked onto this culture, you know, that the West is so obsessed with pushing onto young people. So I was atheistic for the past few years. I'd say like I'm 19 now. I'm about to be 20 soon. And I find it so interesting how like for those few years, like I was so depressed. I was so miserable. And that's because I didn't have God in my life. I didn't know what God was. I didn't know what God even wanted from me. None of that. The reason why eventually I gravitated towards Islam is because I feel like Islam fixes all the issues that we're currently facing here in the West, here in America. Islam fixes all the issues that a young man may be facing. Islam fixes all the issues that a young woman may be facing. I think Islam is the cure to the cancer that is this woke agenda that's being pushed onto young people. With that being said, it's not like I was wanting to become a Muslim like just overnight. It was a very long journey. Like I would say like when I was 16 is when like I stopped being atheistic, and that's because like when I was 15, that's when I started boxing, and boxing definitely helped me to be more of a disciplined individual, and also like boxing helped me to discover who I really was. And I gotta like alhamdulillah, like thank I gotta thank God every day that I got into boxing, because if I did it, I probably like me, like I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't vape, alhamdulillah, none of that bullshit, you know. A lot of my friends, I can't say the same for that. But with boxing though, and the fact that I guess like I have a dream with boxing, that's why like I never got hooked onto it, you know. I'm not gonna say like, you know, I never tried none of it, you know what I'm saying? By the will of Allah, I never got addicted to it, you know. Because Allah has different plans for me, I know. So, like I was saying before, it's not like I became a Muslim overnight. It wasn't until like I was 16 where like my worldview started changing, just because of, like I mentioned, like with the boxing, but also like I saw the way like how fighters were religious, and it was the Muslim fighters in particular that inspired me to be religious. You know, it's kind of weird because like they inspired me to take up Catholicism again, the faith that my family practices. And of course, you know, I wanted the stamp of approval from my father, from my mother, you know, because that's just the culture, you know. I think like if you look up like a statistic or whatever, you know, that Catholicism is probably like the biggest religion for Latinos, you know, especially in El Salvador, you know. I'm Salvadoran, and I just find it so interesting how like, you know, I was a Catholic, but it was the Muslim fighters that inspired me to take my faith seriously, because I saw how disciplined they were with their faith. And so when I saw fighters like Habib, when I saw fighters like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, these were the three main guys that I saw that made me want to take up religion again. So, despite, you know, okay, from 16 onwards, I'm, you know, Catholic, I'm going to church, you know, reading the Bible. Like, I remember, like, as a little kid, like, going to Sunday school, Holy Communion. And I think, like, about 3 years ago is when I got confirmed. Um, yeah, 3 years ago. From then on, it's like, okay, I'm practicing my faith. I'm getting the stamp of approval from my parents and whatnot. But it was always just like this question in my head, like, you know, reading into the Bible and stuff. I just had so many questions, you know, regarding things like the Trinity, and like how, like, I always saw like how, you know, us Catholics always ask for intercession from, you know, Mary, peace be upon her, or like how we were like essentially just worshiping statues, you know, even the idea of the Eucharist, you know, it's just like we take the body of Christ, but it's like it was just so like it was making me like question like my faith, you know, just like who's to say like I go to another man, another human being, confess my sins to him, and then I'm free of sin after saying 10 Hail Mary. Is that really what God is? I saw like how with how tolerant Christianity overall has become, and seeing, I mean, like what the Pope is doing. I'll definitely make a more detailed video like explaining my whole story. Like I gotta talk about my whole story. It'll probably be a very long video. But I definitely gotta talk very in depth about everything, because right now I'm just giving you like little like tidbits, you know. But the reason why I chose Islam is because I saw Islam as the only real religion left on the planet. And I think Islam is the cure for the West. I genuinely believe that. I didn't convert, I didn't revert out of choice. It was definitely something that happened to me. Um, Never in a million years did I think that I would say that I'm a Muslim today. But Alhamdulillah, Allah guided me, because He saw something in here. He saw something in my heart, and He guided me. And I could only thank Him for, you know, all the trials, all the pain, all the shortcomings, all the sins, like everything, every ounce of pain I've ever been through in my life. It happened so I could accept Islam. And I don't want to make this video too long, but I'll just say this. This time, in 2022, I asked God, bless me with success. And last year, I got into Islam. With that being said, I'm going to turn 20 soon. I have a lot to think about. And honestly, guys, I'm not going to be like, you know, a bullshitter. I'm not going to just like act like, I'm perfect, There's definitely a lot of things that I have to give up, a lot of sacrifices I have to make, to build up to be the person that I want to be, But I know that once I give up, the haram one by one, I know that Allah is going to bless me immensely. So, inshallah, I will rise, and inshallah, my brothers watching all over the world, we will all rise together, inshallah. Honestly, guys, I could say with confidence, despite being sick or whatever, like, I feel like my heart is like burning with a different type of fire like I've never felt it in a real long time, maybe ever. I've never felt this way. So going into this new year, going into my 20s, it's gonna be non-stop action, baby. I'm definitely looking forward to training like an animal, making money, making the right moves, meeting the right people, finding love, and building a family. And those are the things that I have to focus on, because those are the values that they wanted me to forget, but now I see why they wanted me to forget them, because those are the only values that matter at the end of the day. Inshallah, Allah will bless me throughout the year and for the rest of my life. And I wish that you guys stay blessed as well. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.